So my parents passed away in a horrible accident. I was sent to live with my aunt, who, by the way, turned my life into a nightmare. She accused me of everything, abused me, manipulated me, gaslighted me, you name it, she did it. So, when I found out a little secret about her favorite jewelry that suddenly went missing, well, I knew exactly what I had on my hands.
If I sit back and recall my childhood, it's not really that eventful. Or maybe the reason for not having that many memories is my parents' death when I was just 6. My parents were a loving couple and had always showered me with lots of love and affection, as I was their only child. I remember my dad coming back home in the evening and my mom picking me up from my school and then just playing with me. My dad used to bring me to fun fairs a lot, and the picture album I had of us, well, all of us 3, always made my heart ache. I could feel their love from the way their eyes always shone looking at me. So, when they both got into a deadly car crash and died on the spot, I was traumatized. My cheery self just disappeared, and I became a scared little kid. I was pretty young back then, but I can't forget how many days I kept awake crying alone at the orphanage till my aunt decided to adopt me. Well, Aunt Martha was my dad's half-sister and lived in a different state. So, when she finally got a hold of me, she decides to take me in for the sake of her, well, dead brother. Or, at least that's what I thought back then before I found out her real motive. Just when I thought I finally found a family to call mine again, I was proven wrong. I had taken Aunt Martha to be a sympathetic and kind person, but even in the early days, I realized she called me a bundle of misfortune and blamed me for my parents' death even. She even called me the devil. And just as I grew up, I realized more and more that she despised me and why she took me in. It's because of the money. The inheritance I would get once I became a legal adult, it wasn't much, but a good amount to have a better life. Anyways, Aunt Martha's own family wasn't big. Just her husband and her daughter Rachel, who was 2 years older than me. You see, Rachel was a spoiled person. Spoiled by them, just like I was by my parents, but definitely not in a good way. As Aunt never even bothered to correct her mistakes and just let her do whatever she wanted, or what she liked, not caring if it brought trouble to others. Her husband George, my uncle, was mostly neutral about everything. He even treated me badly, but also never tried caring for me too. Just stayed away from me and did not pay attention to me most of the time. He was a workaholic and never really got involved in household matters. Uncle was working in a big company and earning a really good amount, and Aunt Martha loved it. Her obsession with expensive things and luxury items made that evident. She loved spoiling herself, however, she was not easy when it came to giving Rachel money. But that was all because she loved spending on herself a bit too much. Rachel was still given a good amount of allowance, while I was just given a couple of bills occasionally, only if I needed them for something really important. Rachel hated me from day one for some reason, and her hatred was shown by how she never gave a chance of bullying me to slip away. It all started with her always snatching candy from me, to her pulling my hair when she would be frustrated or hitting me while throwing a tantrum. But things started getting worse when we entered middle school. She was my senior, so she and her friends always mocked me and made fun of me. This led to others getting brave and picking on me as well. One time, I remember things getting out of hand when I tried resisting and fighting back. I was dragged to the restrooms by Rachel and her friends. They started rummaging through my bag and throwing my books on the dirty floor. Rachel only watched them do so with an amused smile. I tried to fight back, and I resisted a girl pushing me harshly as I stumbled and fell down. Blood dripped from my knees where they got scratched. I sniffled, trying to stand again, and something snapped in me as I pushed the girl back and she fell down. Her face twisted in pain like a mine as she hit the ground. Well, this made Rachel and her other friends well, they all started beating me and somehow saw everything happening and reported it to the principal. When our parents got called, or should I say Rachel's, They were furious. Just when I thought they would scold Rachel and punish her for disgusting behavior, well, the opposite happened. Aunt Martha was livid as Rachel told her a fake sob story, making up lies that I was the one who stole something from her friend, and they were just checking when I pushed one of the girls and then lost my balance and fell. I tried my best to yell that it wasn't my fault and she's lying at their faces. But of course, Aunt Rachel believed her own daughter. My punishment was starvation for 2 days, for tarnishing their image according to them. I'd cried my eyes out, pleading to my aunt that I was innocent, but it all went to vain. After this particular event, Rachel got a free pass to dump all her mistakes on me. You see, protesting was useless as they always believed their angel, Rachel, would never lie, and me, a devil child, would surely. So, it's no surprise that Rachel got braver and started to always play innocent while I would be the one to be blamed for her mess. When Rachel entered high school, she starts mixing up with the wrong crowd. She started drinking, going to parties, and Aunt never cared to stop her. Au the contraire, I wasn't allowed to go out, hang with friends, or even invite them over. In short, I was not allowed to have a social life. Aunt Martha turned a blind eye to her own daughter's activities, and that only resulted in Rachel becoming rebellious and a big troublemaker. I was tired of being the punching bag. I wanted to move out, but I had no money to support myself until I get a hold of my parents. That was the only reason I was putting up with their problematic behavior, and just quietly tolerating all of their injustices. Even when once Aunt Martha tried to make me sign some papers, and I found out it was about transferring my rights. I immediately refused and got beaten quite a lot that day. No matter how many times she tried to manipulate me to give her the money, I knew I can't trust that woman. And this resulted in them neglecting me. The lack of support from them made it easier for people at school to bully me. Well, over the years, I'd just learned to ignore them, most of them at least, and show no reaction whatsoever. Or if somebody would try to physically harm me, I start to hit them back. Everybody hated me, and those who did not were scared to be my friend, seeing what happens to me all the time. I mean, I was called names, harassed, but my guardians never showed any interest in protecting me. I was considered an easy target to let out their frustrations. Despite that, I never let anyone break me. Even if I was wounded mentally and physically, I never gave up. Even when one time, Rachel set me up. Okay. What happened when she invited a boy over? Aunt Martha was not home, so they considered it a perfect opportunity to fool around. I tried to make her stop, which only resulted in Rachel warning me to stay out of her business. But then Aunt Martha walked in and saw a boy in the lounge. It was a strict policy to bring no guys over. So it's no surprise that she was fuming seeing the guy chilling on the couch. She made him leave and demanded an explanation, and before I could enlighten her about her daughter's deeds, Rachel began telling her the total opposite of the truth. She lied that the guy was my acquaintance and not hers, and she tried to stop me, but I did not listen. I just tried my best to defend myself, but Aunt Martha was too furious to even lend me an ear. She just dragged me towards my room and grounded me. When I tried again, she shot me a glare, telling me one more word out of my mouth would result in her kicking me out. After that, I was horrified to even associate myself with Rachel. I avoided her like a plague and tried to stay as far away from her as possible. But Rachel did not give up. She stirred more trouble for me every now and again and made my life an absolute living hell. You see, Rachel had always been unsatisfied with the money she was given and always complained about it just, well, not being fair enough. So, it's no wonder that she started to steal it. It all started when Uncle George forgot his wallet at home, and when he came back, he found his wallet empty. It wasn't difficult to assume that somebody stole it, of course, and the easiest target to blame was guess who? Me. Ha! Wow. I was summoned to their room where I was considered guilty already. I remembered being asked questions about picking up the money, but I refused to admit it as I had no connection to it whatsoever. Aunt Martha tried to make me confess, but I stayed adamant that I had no idea where the money disappeared to. The lack of evidence against me, well, it caused them to let me go, even though Aunt Martha claimed that she saw me passing by the couch as if she did not see herself pass by it a dozen times. Anyways, after it happened again, this time I was punished, though there was still no evidence or proof that I stole it. The worst part is probably Rachel was not even considered to be responsible for it, and it only boiled my blood. But I knew that it was a matter of time before she got exposed, or if she doesn't, then I knew I would be the one doing it, and my determination got stronger when the incident happened. I recall that it was Aunt Martha's birthday, and Uncle George came home late. She was upset about it at first, but then a diamond necklace was given to her as we were having dinner. It was a pretty necklace, with a diamond hanging in the middle, and, well, Aunt Martha was ecstatic to have it. She was in a good mood after that for almost 3 days, until it disappeared. Well, I was back from school when I saw Aunt Martha hysterically sobbing and crying out loud. I hesitantly neared her, confused about the situation, but the moment her eyes laid on me, I saw something flicker in them, and she marched towards me and slapped me across the face so darn hard. My head turned to one side and my jaw felt like it broke. Tears instantly escaped my eyes as I tried not to touch the aching area. My lips were even trembling to question her about what I've done wrong, but the words she spat out next made my eyes widen in horror. She yelled at me, demanding me to give her back her diamond necklace, and I had no idea what she was even going on about. I stared at her confused, and that only made her even more mad. I watched Rachel sitting on the couch, calmly as she let her mother yell at me, and I saw an amused little smirk creep upon her face. When Aunt Martha accused me of stealing her necklace, I was scared my legs were shaking as I tried to tell her it wasn't me, Aunt Martha, I promise. But she was too out of it to give me a chance to explain. I tried to tell her that I had nothing to do with the disappearance of the necklace, and I honestly didn't know how to tell her that I had no guts to steal such an expensive piece of jewelry. But because of her previous wrong allegations against me, she was convinced that I was the one behind the robbery. I was trembling in fear, not exactly sure of what happened next, but it shocked me. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. Today's story is wild. OP is going through a lot, and well, we do have multiple updates to get into, so we're going to see exactly what happened with that diamond necklace. Here we go. Update number 1. It happened so fast that my mind did not even register it. One moment I was in the living room hearing her yell, and the next moment I was dragged into the kitchen and she was pouring hot boiling water on my hand. I shrieked in pain, pushing her away as I fell to the ground crying. Aunt Martha had gone crazy that day. She yelled at me, threatening to call the police if I did not admit to stealing it, and then return it back to her immediately. I was busy pleading with her to let me go and tried to make her believe I was innocent while Rachel just interrupted us. Her eyes were shaking as if the word police scared her more than it was supposed to scare me. She told her mom that it was way too much to get the cops involved as it could tarnish the family's reputation, you know. And till now I might have sold it, so it's not easy to prove that the culprit is me. I frowned upon hearing her statement and something clicked in my brain as I voiced out the next words without thinking much. What I said was, if they checked Rachel's room, and this earned me another harsh slap as both mother and daughter started verbally abusing me. That day was hard for me. I remember treating my injury by myself and crying myself to sleep. The very next day, I was again asked to admit my crime. This time, Uncle George was sitting there too. Rachel was nowhere to be seen. She was already left off the hook while I was still investigated like a criminal. My uncle gave me the chance to go first, and I explained my routine honestly. After finishing and making sure to not leave a single detail, he asked Aunt Martha if she had checked the rooms, and she immediately nodded. I wanted to tell you that Rachel's room was never checked, but I just had no courage to say anything at all. They decided to check my room once again. I mean, I wasn't nervous at all. I had nothing to hide, so I stayed calm standing near the door as Aunt Martha frantically searched through the room. After a good 15 solid minutes of checking, she found nothing, and eventually had to leave me alone, and I knew, even though the matter was closed, she still suspected me. Honestly, I could not do anything about it. I knew it was an expensive piece and it was definitely a big loss. But being blamed for no reason hurt me a lot. I didn't know what to do. But one thing I was sure of was that Rachel knew something. Her sudden panic when Aunt Martha threatened to get the police involved was suspicious, so I decided to find the reason by myself. And that was a smart step I took, as I found something out just a few days later. Update number 2. It was 4 days after the incident. It was a Saturday and my uncle and aunt weren't home. It was only me and Rachel, and I immediately locked herself in my room to avoid her at all costs. I could hear multiple voices outside indicating that she definitely had some friends over, again. Regardless, I stayed in my room. I spent hours doing homework. It was only when I felt extremely tired that I decided to go get some milk. I was very careful on my steps as I tried my best to be as sneaky as possible to avoid them spotting me. I quickly walked to the kitchen and poured myself some milk before retreating back. I climbed 2 steps in the staircase when I heard something that froze me. Rachel mentioned a diamond necklace. I stopped and paid full attention to what she was saying. There she was, discussing with her friends how and where to sell her mom's necklace. I was horrified by the revelation, but disgust filled my senses as I recalled the torture her mother did to me when I was wrongly accused, and all the time she was enjoying my pain. I wanted to storm towards her to pinch her right across the face, but I just decided to act against my impulses and decided to devise a better plan to expose her. I was totally aware of the fact that accusing her would result in them beating or hitting me, as they never suspected their little angel. So, I need to find some evidence to confront her. And so the next few days, I tried to look for ways to sneak into her room. But it wasn't possible, as she always locked her room before leaving. I was stupefied by her parents still not suspecting her, but anyways, I was looking for an opportunity to expose her, and it came sooner than expected. But before all that, I had to endure whatever trouble Aunt put me through just to show her distaste towards me. She started hating me even more. She made me do all the house chores and laundry as punishment. She always talked badly about me on the phone and complained about the misfortune I brought to her family and how she regrets taking me in. I just kept my mouth shut, tolerating it all, waiting for an opportunity to strike back and let myself be free of the pain they were imposing on me. Update number 3, 3 weeks later. 3 weeks passed, and I did not find a single shred of evidence or chance to enter her room. And rather than discouraging me, it only gave me hope that it was still inside her room. I could not be more glad. I had a gist of what she's not selling it yet, and why exactly. Maybe it was the matter was still hot, and she might be looking for a client that would be willing to buy something stolen, as no jewelry shop would accept it without a receipt to make sure it's not stolen. Anyways, it happened on Rachel's birthday. She was showered with love as her parents gave her gifts and money and allowed her to have fun and even be out as late as was her special day. And for the first time, I was happy with the special treatment she was receiving. She dressed up nicely, putting on expensive clothing as she got ready to leave. And I immediately entered her room when her friends arrived. I knew it was risky. She might question my sudden appearance, but she only nodded and picked up her bags as she hurriedly stormed out. Well, I stood at the door watching her disappear with her friends, and my heart was pounding loudly as I entered her room again. My hands were shaking, and I did not know where to check first. Hesitantly, I took a step near her cupboard and opened it. It's a bunch of her fancy clothing came into my view, and I took a deep breath just to calm myself as I slowly started rummaging through it. Well, I made sure not to ignore any small crevices. looking for the item that caused me so much pain and humiliation. I was disappointed when I did not find it there. I started to look for it on the bedside table or any drawer I found in the room. I found tons of rubbish and blackmail material in her room, but not the things I was looking for. I was close to crying. If I could not find it, there was no way I could prove myself to be innocent. Just as I turned around to walk away, my hand collided with a pot. And it fell down, but something else also fell which caught my eye. My heart, it was racing as I picked up the familiar diamond necklace. I felt resentment and sadness twirl in my stomach as I stared at the jewelry. I took a breath again before walking out of the room, and just as I stepped out, Aunt Martha spotted me. She frowned seeing me come out of Rachel's room, but before she could berate me, her eyes fell on the prize. The jewelry in my hand, and her eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. She stared at it, dumbfounded. Before she could say anything, I spoke up. I told her that even now she might be thinking it's some kind of planning against her daughter. Then she would wait for her daughter's response and then see if she can decide who the culprit is herself. Even though she didn't say anything, I knew she also got the idea of what the truth was. I calmly handed the necklace to her before walking away. Just as I entered my room, I finally took a breath. I could not believe what I've actually said and did, but it was only the beginning. Rachel's dirty little secret was going to be soon outed. Update number 4. Aunt Martha feigned ignorance as I told her to. She acted normally, not to mention that she found her necklace. So, when 2 days later she saw a frantic Rachel turning her whole room upside down looking for something, she only stared at her with something I could not decipher. Or maybe I can. It was broken trust. She was quiet as she approached her daughter, and Rachel stilled her movement when Aunt asked her what exactly she was looking for. Her stuttering and nervousness only made her believe me more. I did not interfere at all. I only stood outside the room watching the scene unfolding in front of me. Aunt asked her again, but Rachel gave some poor excuse, and Aunt chuckled dangerously as she showed her necklace. Rachel went pale recognizing it, and she was speechless. Before she could gain her confidence ability to lie right at our faces again, Aunt slapped her, making her head turn. A sense of satisfaction made me feel ecstatic, and I just never imagined the roles would be reversed. She yelled profanities at her as she demanded an explanation from her. Well, her head hanging down and arms at the side with hands fisted, she yelled back, and this made Aunt angry, but we all froze when Uncle George's voice entered our ears. Rachel's eyes widened as she heard him, and that's how she was finally caught. Uncle cut her allowance and she was forced to find a part-time job. Aunt Rachel apologized to me, but I knew it was not an act of apology. She was trying to mediate things as I was soon going to get money from my parents. And well, her greedy self was trying to be nice to get it. I pretended to be okay for the time being, and I just stayed quiet and started looking for a job. Well, I soon found a good part-time job, and one day I received a call and it was my father's old lawyer. He told me to meet him, and that's what I did. I had an idea what it could be about, related to my inheritance, and it was. After years of abuse I went through, I finally got my money. Aunt Martha got to know about it, so when I told her I was moving out, she did everything in her power to stop it. She could not let such a big amount slip away, but I did not put up with her demands anymore, and she went hysterical, crying, reminding me about the things she's done for me, and she even tried to a little trick she had up her sleeve. From threatening me to begging me and emotionally blackmailing me, but I've had enough. Her husband also tried to make me reconsider, but I knew how greedy he was. I had threatened to call the police when they did not let me leave, and I could finally escape that hellhole. The money was not a lot, but was enough to buy a small apartment. I enrolled in a good university and started a new job. I was happy to be able to move on with my new life and put all the hardships in the past. Well, Rachel found new troubles every now and then, and the relatives now finally knew who the devil child actually is. She was even involved in a shoplifting accident. Uncle and aunt tried contacting me to bail her out, and I insulted them in front of all my relatives, told them to leave me alone before I cut all ties with them. Honestly, though, I could care less. I had my own life to care about.
Well, it turns out Aunt Martha was a terrible, terrible person. I would like to know, though, why OP's uncle never stepped in and basically said, hey, this is too much, pouring hot water on somebody. We don't even know if he took the jewelry. That part was absurd. But guys, I want to know, if you were in OP's unique position, how would you go about handling this situation? How would you go about handling, well, the nightmare daughter that you now live with as well, who's blaming you for absolutely everything? And also, what did you think about the icing on the top of the cake when OP goes ahead and gets his parents' inheritance money and decides not to give her $1? I would love to hear from you guys, so drop your comments down below. If you liked the video, the best way to support me is very simple. All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. See ya!